Get started. Good evening, everybody. Thanks a lot for joining us today. Today we'll be going through the San Francisco Public Utility Commission's workshop on the Green Infrastructure Grants for Homes program. So this is a great opportunity to learn more about this pilot program that SFPUC is running. Our goals with this pilot program are to reduce the amount of stormwater runoff that enters into our sewer system. And so we'll share a little bit more about what that means and how that all works. And then in this effort, there's also an opportunity for residents to lower the stormwater portion of your sewer service charge. And yeah, overall, we're excited about this program, and hopefully we'll learn a lot through this pilot, and in the future use this as a way of learning about green infrastructure at the residential scale and hopefully expand this citywide. So with that, I think we can get started. We'll just start with some introductions. My name is Will Logsden. I'm the program manager for Green Infrastructure Grants for Homes. And I help administer the program, help with assistance for our participants, and I'll pass it over to my teammate Yahira to introduce herself too.
Yeah, thank you, Will. Hi, everyone. My name is Yahira. I'm the program coordinator. You might have seen me at some of the tabling events this past month. So yeah, I also assist with the program. If you are chosen to participate, you'll probably be communicating a lot with me. So yeah, I look forward to meeting you all.
Yeah, hi everyone. Good evening. My name is Meg Hello. I'm also supporting with the program, mostly with like research or helping develop like different materials and things like that. But yeah, happy to be here.
And hi, I'm Nora Kusaka Herrero. I'm the program administrator. I work at Greenprint Partners, and so we're partnering with the SFPUC on this program. I'm a civil engineer by trade, so we're going to be helping develop the design for the green infrastructure if your property is selected, and we'll be assisting with coordination and providing support through the entire process.
Great. Thanks, team. So just some housekeeping. Firstly, we're going to record this workshop and we'll post the recording to our program website in the next few days. We'll also share a PDF of this with attendees. And so if you aren't able to write down everything that you see in the slides today, don't worry, we'll send that information out after today. And if you have any questions along the way, please use the Q&A box, and we'll have some time for Q&A at the end of the workshop. And then finally, throughout the presentation, there'll be some poll questions. So keep an eye out for those that will pop up through Zoom. So the goals for today, the first one is to just understand the scope of this program and what we're trying to achieve with the Green Infrastructure Grants for Homes effort. A little bit more about what this program funds and does not fund. Why it was created in the first place, and then we'll have time to have your questions on the program answered, and then hopefully you'll be equipped with the information and knowledge that you need to make an informed decision about whether or not you want to potentially enroll in this program. So the agenda for today, we'll go through a little bit about the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, who we are, what we do, a little bit more about green infrastructure and stormwater and why we're interested in that topic. And then we'll go into the details of this pilot program and some next steps on how to apply, and then ending with any questions that you all have. All right, so with that, we will start with our first poll question. And so you should see that pop up here in Zoom. So we're curious to see, how familiar are you with green infrastructure? Just so we get an idea of the kind of starting point with the audience here. And so 0 would be not familiar, never really heard of green infrastructure. Expert is like, I know exactly what a rain garden is, and I know where it's going to go on my property. So looks like it's so far got about 6 responses. So bit of a mix, mostly folks around the 2. So like maybe have heard of it, but not super familiar. No experts. But it sounds like there's some familiarity, which is great. So we're not starting from scratch. We've got some knowledge and background on maybe on green infrastructure, maybe some of the projects that you know that maybe that PUC has worked on. Great. So we can go to the next slide. All right, so as the first item on our agenda is just to kind of introduce the SFPUC. So San Francisco Public Utilities Commission. We can go to the next slide. So we are the water, power, and sewer utility for the city and county of San Francisco. We provide drinking water to residents in San Francisco, as well as over 2 million other customers in the Bay Area. We also generate clean power and provide electricity for San Francisco's municipal buildings and bus lines. And then finally, where our team is really focused on is on the sewer side of things. We operate and maintain the city's sewer system and wastewater treatment facilities. So a little bit more about that sewer system. San Francisco is somewhat unique in the design of our sewer system, which you may be familiar with. We have what's called a combined sewer system, which means that when it rains in San Francisco, all of the water that washes off the streets and the rooftops is all collected in the same set of pipes that collects the wastewater and sanitary flow from sinks, toilets, and showers. So that's called a combined sewer system, and that has a lot of benefits by treating all of that combined stormwater and wastewater at our treatment facilities. So that does have water quality benefits. Otherwise, in a lot of areas, stormwater that's running off the street just goes straight to the ocean or to the bay, which carries pollutants and has impacts to water quality. But there are trade-offs. In San Francisco, we do have a very old and aging sewer system, and so we have capacity issues in certain areas of the city. And so what that means is when we get these really large storm events, which as we've seen and we know will become more frequent and more intense because of climate change, our sewer system tends to have capacity issues, which can lead to flooding and combined sewer discharges, which has a negative impact on water quality in the ocean and the bay. And so with this program, we're trying to address some of these the citywide issues around stormwater when we get these big rain events. So the way that we can address some of those issues is through what's called green infrastructure. And so this is really the focus of this program. Green infrastructure is a set of tools that we use to capture and slow down water before it ever even reaches the sewer system. And so the goal is to reduce the pressure on the sewer system, reduce the burden to give our system more capacity during these big storm events. And there's a lot of different ways we can do that. And Nora is going to go through some examples that we can apply at the residential scale. But really with green infrastructure, it's acting like a sponge. In addition to just capturing that stormwater, we're hoping to deliver other benefits like adding green space to our neighborhoods, potentially helping with creating native habitat, recharging groundwater, or even helping our water system by capturing and reusing stormwater as for irrigation and using that as a resource instead of a waste product. And this is just one effort. The Green Infrastructure Grants for Homes is sort of one piece of our larger citywide strategy that we are calling Transform the Storm. So we have a number of different programs at different scales. We're looking at implementing green infrastructure on streets and parks and schools. And so if it turns out this program maybe isn't the right fit for you and your household, there are also other ways to get involved in Transform the Storm through our other efforts. So with that, I think I will pass it over to Nora to give you a little bit more background on some of the specific types of green infrastructure.
Thanks, Will. So there are many types of green infrastructure. We're going to focus on 4 types because those are the 4 that we are looking to implement as a part of this program. So the first one are rain gardens. Rain gardens are depressed planting areas that have native plantings, as you can see by these beautiful photos. And also they have some special engineered soils that absorb and treat stormwater. The rain gardens are typically depressed areas so that they can store some water as they pond. So the water will kind of fill up a little bit. And so they typically collect nearby paved surfaces, or as you can see in the top left photo, downspout runoff, which is coming from the roof. And so the water that's captured by the rain garden will slowly infiltrate through the soils, and it'll make its way to the groundwater aquifer. And that's just the body of water that exists beneath our feet. It can vary in elevation, but regardless, the water will make its way down there due to gravity. So the next one is infiltration trenches. So these function very similarly to the rain gardens. Typically, they're larger, but for this program, we're kind of adopting whatever we can fit, since space is probably the biggest constraint with infiltration trenches and rain gardens. They have aggregate in place of some of the plants and the soil and the mulch on top. So you can see that in the photo to the left. This one was actually installed as a part of this program. And so the stone has space between it. So if you think of like a ball pit, you'll have balls come together, but there's going to be little void spaces of air, and that gets filled with water. And so these can provide some storage capacity as well. But we like to see some native plantings around it because the native plantings help the water get absorbed because of their roots, and also will help filter pollutants. They also look nice and increase native habitat for pollinators. So as I mentioned, rain gardens and infiltration trenches are great, but they have that constraint of available space. And so a couple of the other options that we're looking at as a part of this program are permeable pavement. Permeable pavement is a surface system, so it goes right on the top. It could be replacing a driveway. As you can see in the bottom right corner, that one was also installed as a part of this program. Or it can, replace a backyard patio, like the top left corner, which was also installed as a part of this program. So what the permeable pavement does is that it can be concrete or asphalt or pavers, but if it's concrete or asphalt, those particles, once again, are going to have some pockets between them that allows water to filter through that surface and go into the aggregate or the gravel beneath that. And then once again, that will infiltrate down into the soil due to gravity. But you could also do pavers, as shown in the two projects we've installed, or the bottom left corner. As you can see, those are kind of getting put together, but there's spaces between the pavers. And so that's where the water will filter through the space. So this is a surface feature that we could also use as install as a part of this program. And then the last one is a little bit different because it is a rain barrel or a rainwater harvesting cistern. All of these photos were installed as a part of this program. What's so great about rainwater harvesting cisterns is that they can capture runoff from a downspout. So we would be rerouting an external downspout. So that's if you can see the piping on the outside of your building. And we would reroute it to this rainwater harvesting cistern that will fill up and will help store some water. But what's so great about these is that you can use that water for irrigation. So for watering plants in your backyard or in your front yard. So there's the added benefit of possibly reducing your water bill because you'll get to use some of that stored rainwater. So this one is a little different because it's not a surface feature. It would be an actual item structurally added to your property, but it has that additional added benefit of water reuse. So those are the four types of green infrastructure we would look to add as a part of this program.
Yeah, thank you, Nora, for that. Yeah, we can get a little bit into some of the more pilot program logistics. covering the basics process and some of our goals with the pilot program. So like Will mentioned, our two major goals for this pilot program are to reduce the amount of stormwater runoff entering our sewer system, which now you know why it's so important to help reduce that. And the other goal is to lower the stormwater portion of our customer sewer service charge. And the sewer service charge, we actually have a stormwater credit. So the PUC recently updated their water and sewer rates. So they basically restructured the sewer portion of the bill into a stormwater component and a wastewater component. So if you actually have green infrastructure on your property, you can apply for a stormwater credit to reduce that stormwater component. And you will have to maintain it every year. But this is also a great benefit from having green infrastructure on your property. Yeah, and then some of the eligibility criteria of how you know if you can apply for our program is you have to live within one of these 4 zip codes. So the property must be located, in Sunset, Parkside, Bayview, Hunters Point, or the Portola, Miss Valley, Sunnydale area. One of our other criteria is that you must live in a single family home or a small apartment and have an active residential service account with the PUC, which I'm sure most of you guys already have. And I also want to point out that you can apply even if you are tenant occupied or owner occupied. If you are tenant occupied, though, we will need the homeowners approval, and they would also be the ones working with us as well. Yeah, and then some more detail on the actual project selection, how the projects are going to be selected. We've mentioned that this program is on a first come, first served basis, so we will be reviewing the applications as we receive them. After that, we will be selecting projects based on location. Ideally, we would want to do like 50% of the projects in the eligible west side zip codes, and then the other 50% in the eligible east side zip codes. And then we would also like to have a variety of project types. So having a diverse project portfolio will really help the PUC learn as much as we can about implementing different types of green infrastructure on residential properties that are different. So, we would like to get project types that, we install in different types of soil or different types of slope and steepness. So we would kind of use all of that to kind of pick the participants. And we've mentioned this is a first come, first serve program. It is a pilot program, so we do have limited funding. We are aiming to do around 10 to 15 projects for this cycle, but we're just trying to maximize how many we can do with our funding. And lastly, if you are not selected to participate in our program for the first time around, we do encourage to keep an eye out from any communications or emails that we might receive from us, because a participant that is chosen may drop out throughout the process, and we may reach out to you to fill in their slot. So we do encourage you to just keep an eye out, and we are, thinking about expanding the program, so just keeping an eye out on updates about the program. Yeah, and then just here are some pilot program basics. That way we're all starting off on the same page. The first one is that there are no costs to participate in the program, besides a tax obligation that I'll touch upon later on. But there's absolutely no cost to participate in the program. We won't ask you to upfront any money for your contractor or anything like that. The only cost associated with the program will be the maintenance after the program is complete to maintain your green infrastructure. And the project types are the 4 that Nora went through, which are the rain gardens, the permeable pavement, rainwater harvesting cisterns, and infiltration trenches. And throughout the process from start to finish, you will work with the PUC and Nora with Green Print Partners, and they'll be providing a property assessment, a concept design, and engineering design services that we'll touch upon a little bit more later on, completely free at no cost to the homeowner. And you're probably wondering how you're going to pay the contractor. You will be receiving 2 payments from us, 50% at the beginning. So you can pay your contractor up front so they can begin construction. And then you will be receiving a second payment that is the last 50% of the bid once the project is complete and we've done a final inspection. Yeah, and then to just go over some eligible versus ineligible costs, the grant will cover everything from design to construction that has to do with the construction of green infrastructure. But the grant will not cover any non-green infrastructure related items. So anything such as like the furnishings or decorative elements, such as a bench, or little stools, nothing of that sort is eligible to be covered under the grant. Everything has to be in relation to the construction of green infrastructure. And then the tax implications. So this is kind of like the fine print that we really want to make everyone aware of off the bat, is that a grant does count as income and therefore it may be taxable. For your reference, for the first round of projects for the initial phase, projects ranged from 15,000 to 35,000. So we really encourage potential participants to do some research or just to determine what the tax liability would look like for a grant of that range. Because if you are selected, you will be receiving a 1099 miscellaneous tax form from Greenprint Partners. And yeah, and I think Nora's going to talk a little bit more in depth about the process of what it looks like once you get selected.
Yeah, so the first step is expressing interest, which you all have done since you all are in attendance of this webinar. And then after today, you're going to be asked to fill out the application. This application will help us gather information such as your address, the length of residency that you've been at that address, property size, and some other specifics, just so that we can get a better understanding of your property and how it would fit with the program. And so if you are qualified and you end up being one of the first come, first serve homes, then we will reach out and set up a consultation call. And this call is we're going to talk a little bit more about the process a bit more now that you've been selected, and to answer any questions that you have at that point. You're going to see that a through line through this whole process is, if you have any questions, we are here to answer them. So that would be this first phase. And then the next phase is, you qualified, you were selected, now what? We're going to have that consultation call. And during that call, we're going to walk through the letter of intent. And this letter of intent is for us to sort of document that you would like to move forward and that you understand what you're signing up for. Pretty much everything that we've talked about so far during this call is to help you understand what you're signing up for. So this letter of intent hopefully will just be a refresher of what we're covering today. And so after that letter of intent is signed, it kind of just confirms with us you're on board. And so we're going to schedule this opportunity evaluation. In other words, we're going to schedule a time to come visit your home and assess your property in person. And this will be an opportunity for us to see what potential green infrastructure facilities will work. And just to get a better idea of the lay of the land. So as you can see in bold, we really want to emphasize or highlight that you could qualify, you could have signed this letter of intent, and we could have performed this opportunity evaluation, but with all of those steps, we might still find out that possibly your site isn't conducive for any green infrastructure. So we just want to sort of preface that we're going to do all we can to try to make your property work. But if we find that it's not a good fit, unfortunately, it might not be a good fit. So just wanted to make sure that that is known. We hope that's not the case. But it's something that we need to assess in person before we can move to the next phase. And that next phase would be to plan and do the design. So assuming you're eligible, the letter of intent is signed, we've done the opportunity evaluation, and we see there are possibilities, we are going to go ahead and we're going to start drafting up a concept. We're going to obviously take into account what your preferences are, and also our findings from that opportunity evaluation. And we're going to develop a concept, get your feedback, and hopefully an eventual approval, so that we have a design that we can then move forward with and go to soliciting bids. So that would be the next phase. So we have a concept, the SFPUC is on board, the homeowner is on board, and we as Greenprint has evaluated the design, and we're like, yeah, this works. This will capture X amount of gallons. Great. So the next part is, finding someone who can construct that. I mean, it'd be amazing if you all can do it yourself, but we're assuming we're going to be hiring a contractor. So once we have that final concept, we, Greenprint, are going to put together some bid documents so that you, the homeowner, can reach out to various contractors. The SFPUC has been super kind and has already compiled a list that you'll be able to reach out to some pre-qualified contractors. And they've even added note to say, hey, this contractor has participated in this program in the past. And so with that, they're going to be a little bit more familiar with, the whole process, familiar with the type of installations we're looking to do as a part of the program. So that list is very valuable. And then we, Greenprint, are going to put together the bid documents. If anyone's unfamiliar with what that is, totally understandable. It's essentially a group, a package of documents that describe the project, list any requirements as a part of the project, ask contractors to provide qualifications or cost estimates. Essentially, it's for the contractor to say, hey, we can do this work XYZ because of XYZ, and this is how much we think it's going to cost. So those bid documents essentially we'll be able to send to you. You can send it in an email and just start reaching out to contractors. So we've tried to make this as smooth as possible for you all. And we hope that you'd be able to get at least 2 to 3 bids back from contractors, because that'll give us, a good estimate on, we have a high one, we have a low one. Do we go with the middle one? The SFPUC will be able to assist you with reviewing those bids if you're unfamiliar or if you do want assistance with that. But the homeowner will be responsible in soliciting those bids. So going out or reaching out to contractors. Eventually, once you select the contractor, you will enter into a contract directly with them. So you, the homeowner, and the contractor will enter into a contract, and then you, the homeowner, and us, Greenprint, are going to enter into a contract. Once that contract, it's going to be called the subgrant agreement, is signed, and you have signed the contract with your contractor, we will then provide you 50% of the funds for that price that contractor gave you for the project. So you'll get 50% of the funds to pay your contractor so that they know, hey, great, we have, essentially our down payment. We're going to go forward and schedule a date and, get materials if they don't have any on hand, if they don't have the required materials on hand, and then they, can schedule a date to start the work. Yep, so that's this phase. There's sort of like an in-between where we are going to have a subcontractor go out, and they're going to go out periodically during construction to make sure things are being installed correctly, because construction might be outside of your area of expertise. So we're going to have someone who has that experience come in to make sure things are being put in the right way. They're going to go there for the start of construction, some point during the middle, and also at the end. So once construction is complete, the SFPUC is going to do a formal inspection to make sure that everything was designed properly or designed according to the plans. And then There might also be another inspection if the Department of Building Inspection has to do a visit, but that will be handled by the contractor. So don't worry about figuring out the permitting and everything with that. That will be the contractor, and they'll know that. But once hoping all inspections are passed, and the SFPUC has given it sign off, Greenprint is going to issue the remaining funds so that to you, the homeowner, so that you can pay the contractor, and essentially then the contractor's all done. They've done the work. Hopefully it's been installed beautifully. And so you can pay them, and then that sort of like closes that door. But then the last thing that the SFPUC will cover with you is how to maintain the green infrastructure that was just installed. Maintenance is crucial to having your green infrastructure function properly and have of that long-term life that we're hoping for it to have. So they have a maintenance guidebook that they're gonna walk you through, talk about any particulars for the specific green infrastructure that was installed at your site in case there are any particulars. And if you continue with that maintenance, you will continue to receive your stormwater credit because, they just want to make sure that it's still functioning as it should. So that's an overview of each part of the process. And so we're going to move on now to the overall timeline. So here is the overall timeline. The timeline really does depend on many factors, and there are things that we just can't predict as of now, such as weather, material availability, do they have to ship anything from out of state, how long permitting might take, in case we do have to reach out to that DBI, Department of Building Inspections, or if there's any other particular permitting that needs to be required. So we want to keep that in mind. And appreciate your flexibility in advance if you do get selected. But from start to finish, from the previous sort of round of projects we've done, we saw that it takes about a year and a half. So, sorry, a year and a half. So it's a year to 2 years. And that kind of starts from that initial consultation call that we talked about after interest, so evaluation. We're hoping that as I mentioned, we've done a first round of projects and we've figured out some lessons that we've learned from that we can apply those lessons learned to the program moving forward and hopefully make the process a little bit faster. But it is still a pilot, so we're still working on a few things. I want to think the biggest holdup that we had and that we're learning from is the it's emphasized there, the approve and bid and build phase. So the bid request process, so the part having the homeowner reach out to the various contractors to come up with that final contract has probably been the biggest hurdle or the biggest time commitment overall as a part of this entire timeline. So we're hoping that, as I mentioned, reaching out to previous contractors that have been a part of this program, we might be able to expedite that bid process a little bit. But we have found that the biggest variation in how long it's taken homeowners to receive bids back is the amount of participation homeowners have invested into that process. So let's say we have a homeowner who sent out that email to the contractors with the bid documents we provided, and then that was it. They didn't follow up. They didn't have any further emails. It ended up, resulting in maybe 9 months. Like the process took a very long time because the contractor, they're busy. They have other projects going on. But if we have a homeowner who emailed the contractors and then also followed up with a phone call or followed up with additional emails, that kind of pinged the contractor a little bit more. And we were able to get the contract signed within 3 months or something of that nature. So it would be to help us with that phase, if you get selected, is to invest a little bit of time into that. We'll be here to support you the whole time, but if you do that little bit more of investment, it can help expedite. So talking about your time, we have broken down a rough approximate of what we think your time commitment will be for each of those various phases that I talked about. So the first part, your interest, you're spending time now. We're going to have that consultation call. We're going to talk through the letter of intent and everything. That's, going to be 2 to 3 hours, but that's going to be over a couple of weeks because we're having the webinar now, but then the application is going to go live later. And then hopefully the consultation call will be scheduled, a few weeks after, or a couple of weeks after that. So that's why we have 2 to 3 hours, but don't think that's going to be in like one chunk. And that's the same for all of these. So we're going to have the evaluation phase. We're going to review and sign that letter of intent. We're going to do that property evaluation. And so we'd love for you to be on site during that time so we can talk a little bit more. And so that's going to be around 3 to 4 hours, possibly. The planning process of developing that concept, that's going to take time as well. And there might be a little bit of back and forth to finalize that concept. So maybe that's 3 to 4 hours, but over the span of a month or so. And then once again, approved builds, you got that warning sign there. It can vary depending on the contractors you reach out to. Also, the time it takes to get that final contract signed, and then the construction itself, which can vary due to weather and all of the other things that I listed before. So that varies as well. And then finally, the maintenance and inspection phase for that final inspection. The regular and annual maintenance is kind of captured in there, but it very much depends on, do you have lots of trees around? Is that going to cause, more debris to build up? So it's a little site dependent on what the level of maintenance will be required. But overall, as you can see on the right, expect 2 to 3 hours a month of emails that can increase if you want to be more invested in the process. And then if you want to look at the annual maintenance, that's typical for the 4 different types of GI practices we're proposing as a part of this program. There's a link on the program's website that you can review the guidebooks in advance to get a sense of what maintenance might be required for each of those, if you are wondering. So that's the summary of the time commitment, but once again, it can vary. So next, I'll pass it back to you, Yahaira.
Yeah, thank you, Nora. So the next steps, the part I'm sure we're all excited to learn about, our application. So our application will be released on our website this upcoming Monday, so March 31st. It will be on our website. It should go live around noon, so 12 o'clock. Give or take a minute or two. There might be a minute or two of lag time between when our IT department approves it and versus when the public can see it. So please, if it's not exactly 12 o'clock and it's not up there, give it a minute or two. I'm sure it'll be up there. But yeah, so on our website, GI Grants for Homes, if you're gone there now where it says pilot program status, on Monday, this will say applications now open. And it'll have the link to the application right here where this box is. So that's where you can find the application this upcoming Monday. The application will be available in 4 different languages. So please just choose the application that you feel most comfortable with. All the applications will be the same. It's the same material. It's just translated into different languages. Yeah, and so the application will be available online. You will also submit it online. It'll be via a MS form, so Microsoft form. It's going to be a relatively easy application with very simple questions. So just kind of asking you your preferences with green infrastructure and your property characteristics. And so it won't be anything too difficult. We really just want to reiterate, it's a first come, first served basis. So as soon as the application is live, we encourage you to apply because we believe the slots are going to fill up fairly quickly. So as soon as you can, you should apply. And this is actually what the application will look like. So these are just a couple of screenshots. The image on the left is exactly what you should see when you open our application. And it'll just have the eligibility criteria once again, and then very general questions. I am going ahead and stop sharing so I can pull up the actual application so you guys can see that. Let me share my screen. And hopefully you all can see this. This is just a PDF version of the application. But yeah, it'll just ask you your name, your address, and then it'll start asking you the eligibility criteria questions. If you live in the following 4 eligible zip codes, do you live in a single family home or small apartment? And then it'll start going into questions about your preferences. So it'll ask you about your preferences with green infrastructure. You're welcome to choose multiple. You don't only have to choose one. And question 12 will actually ask you to rank your preferences. So you can go ahead and actually move these up and down on the form and your preference and your ranking. And we'll also ask you questions of where you think the best location for it is. And we'd ask like how we can access the backyard if you think the backyard is the best preference. So it'll be about 18 questions. It's fairly simple, fairly quick application process. Yeah, and if you have any questions while you are filling out the application, like please feel free to reach out to us. Oh, my screen is frozen. I'm just trying to share the PowerPoint again. Yeah, if you have any questions during the process, please feel free to reach out to us. We will be available by email to answer any questions that you may have if you're having any trouble filling out the application. And then last but not least, on our website, we have a couple resources on there. We have our fact sheets, we have the program guidelines that kind of break down the program more and go into depth of what it is. And then like Nora mentioned, we have our maintenance guidebook, which I recommend taking a look before the application, just so you know the type of maintenance each type of green infrastructure project would require. And then on there, we also already have the interested contractor list if you wanted to take a look at that already. Yeah, and I think that's pretty much it. We do have a couple more poll questions. Yeah, we can get started with those. So yeah, the first one is just now after this presentation, how familiar would you say you are with green infrastructure? Hopefully it's a little bit more than when we first started.
Sorry, give me 1 second and I will launch that one. Okay, you should see that come up now.
Nice, we have a couple experts.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's great that we have a couple people that moved up to the almost expert or expert level. We can go
Yeah,
on.
it's a lot of 4s and 5s. Yeah.
Yeah. Share the results. Yeah, we can go on to the next one.
Yeah, so this question asks about, what's most important to you as part of this pilot program. Some folks might be coming to us to, improve the aesthetics of their property. Maybe they're interested in capturing some of that water for irrigation, reducing your utility bills, another reason, supporting pollinators. So yeah, seeing a lot of interest in reusing rainwater for irrigation and reducing the utility bill. Those seem to be 2 of the biggest drivers, and then also a couple other folks interested in pollinator habitat, improving properties. So yeah, depending on, what type of green infrastructure is going to be the best fit for your property, we can work with you to, yeah, hopefully achieve, multiple of these objectives, these goals. All right, we'll do so. Poll question number 4 is just an open-ended. What are you most excited about as far as this program and the process? And while folks are brainstorming too, we've got about 12 more minutes remaining in the program today. So if you have any questions and you want to type them into the Q&A box, you can do that. If you'd like to just raise your hand, I think we can also allow you to ask your question live. So while we're going through these last couple of poll questions, feel free to ask us anything that you may be wondering about the program. Let's see. Okay. See if I can view the results here. Can you see the results of that one, Yahira?
Well, mine still says stop sharing results, but I think it's because we're the hosts.
Oh, okay.
As a panelist, I have been seeing it kind of as you've been doing it, and I cannot at the moment.
Okay. Folks can also use the if you prefer to use the chat box to answer the questions, we can do that too, and we can definitely see those answers. So the next one last question is just about any concerns that you have about the process or things that yeah, you might have questions about, or potential issues that you might see arise either during planning or construction or permitting, anything like that that you think you might raise some red flags for you. And it looks like Mary had a question on whether or not only native plants are allowed. No, we don't have a requirement to use native plants, but we definitely would encourage it, and we would provide some guidance. Like we have a list of plants that tend to do well in rain gardens, for example, and we can share that list with you or your contractor. And that list also has information on whether or not it's native, and even more details on like, is it native to California or is it native to San Francisco specifically? We also have information on like what specific types of pollinators, like different species, can help support. So local, moths and butterflies, have different habitat requirements, and so we can like recommend specific species that are good for local pollinators. So not a requirement, but we definitely highly recommend native plants. Yeah.
Yeah, and if it's okay, well, I'm just going to tack on a little bit. With native plants, because they're adapted to the local climate that they're being planted in, they typically they know the rainfall patterns, they're adapted to that, the temperature fluctuations, so they're going to have a higher chance of surviving, and so therefore there's going to be lower maintenance required for them. So they might not die off during the establishment period. And yeah, that's just a little bonus of using native plantings in addition to helping the native habitat.
Thanks, Nora.
Yeah, I think that was all of our poll questions. Yeah, if you have any other questions in the Q&A box, or if you guys want to raise your hand, you guys are welcome to.
Okay, I think I was able to find some, thanks for the feedback, Marianne. So I was able to see some of the responses about, potential concerns. So one of the concerns is that the time taking too long to process the project. So that's definitely feedback we hear, and we're, like Nora mentioned, having gone through a series of projects, I think we've got some good ideas on how we can hopefully speed things up and streamline some things for folks. Yeah, contracting process, working with contractors, including issues that might be uncovered by the contractor when the work begins. Yeah, I definitely hear that. The contracting, like we mentioned, can be a big lift, but in the end, it is going to be a project that's going to impact your home, and so we want to give folks some control over, who they work with and what the relationship is there with their contractor, and so. Some of that we kind of have to leave up to the homeowner, but we're going to provide a lot of support along the way. And then, yeah, if things do come up during construction, we would have a process in place to address any change orders. Like if somebody were to start doing excavation and they discover something that underground that they didn't know about before starting excavation, we would work with you and the contractor to identify, what those costs would be. And if it's eligible for program funding, we would help amend the subgrant to cover that. Unreliable contractors, certainly there's varying levels of experience with contractors, and so hopefully we'd work with you all to find a contractor that has green infrastructure experience and maybe even experience working with us in this program. So there are now a handful of contractors that have delivered these projects specifically with this program. So that's another benefit that this next round of homeowners and projects will have. Yeah, otherwise, just that it's the scope of the project and the idea is ambitious, and it is it's green infrastructure can be ambitious. It's a bit innovative and new in some cases, and so doing this on a residential scale is kind of unique, and so but we think that it has potential to be a big impact for the city. Residential land use makes up a huge portion of San Francisco, and you're looking at the city map, and so thinking about how stormwater management works and the total area of San Francisco, a lot of that stormwater is coming off of residential properties. So if we can find creative ways to more efficiently capture that water, we're definitely interested in trying. But it's a big undertaking, and we'll hopefully be scaling up over time. Let's see, are there any other questions in the Q&A? See. Oh, just some feedback from Marianne. Thanks. Thank you. Hopefully, we're excited about this program. Hopefully folks are excited as well. And we've still got a couple more minutes, but if you do have to hop off, we totally understand. So we'll send out more information, and again, keep an eye out at noon on Monday for the application on the website. And we hopefully look forward to working with some of you all on some projects in the coming year. Yeah, not seeing any other questions. So thanks again, everyone. Really appreciate your time this evening. And hopefully, you'll be hearing more from us soon. Take care, everybody.